Welcome to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast, where you get unconventional insights into wealth building and retirement that actually work. Discover data-driven strategies and learn from a wealth of experience so that you can take your retirement to the next level. Now, here's your host. He was once bitten by a harbor seal, the income engineer, Kraig Strom.
Okay, let's get back to Personal Pension Radio. Thank you for joining me. Wherever you might be, we have some awesome fans all over the world, but here in the United States, from Florida to California, all the way to my home state of Maine. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for sharing Personal Pension Radio. It's been a fantastic, we're going on our second year now, and just love this. Really appreciate all of the support. So, today, Personal Pension Radio, we are broadcasting from Mr. Foley's van, parked once again down by the river. So just taking it easy. It's a beautiful afternoon, just enjoying the nice weather. Now, if you haven't been here before to this particular podcast, you can also catch all of the back episodes on iTunes, and you can find them at personalpensionradio.com. Personal Pension Radio, what it's all about, what I'm all about as a certified financial planner professional, is optimizing retirement income. That we hear it all the time, retirement planning. Oh my goodness, we hear about retirement planning all the time. What we don't hear about as often as, in my opinion, we need to hear is retirement income planning. Retirement planning is a great buzzword or catchphrase, but what do we really want from our retirement? We want income. We need to replace our income so that we can actually live comfortably in retirement. And that does not happen with a product. It doesn't happen with mutual funds. It doesn't happen with life insurance or annuities or real estate. None of those things by themselves answer the optimizing retirement income question. Or the dilemma. You've got to have an integrated approach, and that's my specialty. I am known as the income engineer. That is actually my trademark, that I am the income engineer. That's my passion. I love designing and engineering retirement income strategies. So, before I get too deep into the podcast today, got to make sure that I put out my short disclosure here. Please do not act on advice that you hear on this show or any other podcast or television station or a newspaper or financial magazine. Just don't act on that advice. It's important to learn, but before you act on advice that you hear from a financial entertainer or someone you see on TV, you really have to sit down, and my suggestion is sit down with a qualified, licensed financial practitioner to go over your specific situation. Make sure that you've gone over your details, because taking advice and acting on it when you hear something on the radio, on TV, or on a podcast, it's just incomplete. It's not a good place. It's not a good way to begin or to go forward. Now, also, before I get into segment one, I want to put out something I've not done before. I want to put a shout out to Joshua Sheets. Joshua Sheets from Radical Personal Finance. Joshua is a financial planner, and he actually, some time ago, started Radical Personal Finance. And I'm going to put a link in my show notes to a particular episode that I listened to over the weekend. I do listen to multiple podcasts. I love to learn. I love the different perspectives. Some of the financial entertainers that I listen to drive me nuts, and I have to try not to crash my car, when I'm listening to them. But Joshua Sheets is not one of those guys. He is a legitimate, educated, trained financial planner who has moved into the blogging and the podcasting space full time. I respect him a great deal for that. And this particular episode was called "Don't Worry About a Comfortable Retirement. focus on working in comfort instead. That's episode 293. Again, I'll have it in the show notes, but I wanted to put a thank you out to Joshua because you'll hear this as I get into the some of the segments and the information in the podcast. I really needed to hear this episode. This actually was very timely for me. I'm not necessarily worried about my retirement. I feel like I'm actually heading in the right direction personally. I feel like that things are on track. I am definitely focused on retirement income planning for sure. But the comfortable retirement versus working in comfort instead. And that's the part that really got me, is I found myself personally getting wrapped up in the work, and that the work wasn't comfortable anymore, that the work was too all-consuming and stressful. And I really needed to find a way to get back to being comfortable and less stressed in my daily work life and focus on that more than the idea of just a comfortable retirement, which means I've got to work all the way to that point when I retire and then I can be comfortable. Well, that's not much of a life if you work so crazy hard that you don't stop to enjoy life and be comfortable today. So I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. Thank you to Joshua. That was a great episode. He has a number of other episodes that I have favorited and I've listened to more than once. He has got some great interviews on his podcast, so definitely check that out. So let's get into segment 1, Watch Your Step. So this segment, I like to go through and just sift through the web and Google and various things that are coming across. I have multiple different things that come up on my news feed so that I can see what's out there and what's being put out there as far as the mainstream or contemporary advice. And I'm going to bring back something that I haven't covered in detail in a while. It's this idea that a product is not the answer. A product is not the answer. And in my intro to this show, I'm always saying that the 401k or mutual funds or life insurance isn't the answer. Well, I want to be a bit more specific, right? That what I've heard lately, these are things that have come up lately in client and professional interactions with other advisors and other professionals, attorneys, and CPAs, that almost universally I hear things like, oh, you got to max out your 401k. I mean, Merrill Lynch actually has top 10 things that you should do. Recently they published, and I mean, like, I try and remember how many of these, when you look at the first thing you should do is you should focus on starting today. Well, okay, duh, let's start today. But the second thing is contribute to your 401k. And then the next thing down on the list is open an IRA. And then the next thing is take advantage of the catch-up contributions. And then automate your savings. And if you catch a little bit of a trend in the idea here, it's you should just save more, right? So you should save more, and almost inevitably you should save in a 401k. You should get that done. Well, for the record, and maybe this will just blow your mind, but this is my opinion. You can't retire on a 401k. You can't retire and keep a decent lifestyle on a 401k by itself. You just can't put enough money in a 401k to really live comfortably in retirement, to generate enough retirement income on a 401k by itself. So that first piece, the 401k, that's a product. That's a product pitch that says max out your 401k. Well, good. Okay, fine. Max out your 401k. But don't forget that is a tax-deferred vehicle, meaning that someday the government wants their taxes. So if you didn't spend the tax, or you didn't pay the tax this year. Don't spend your tax savings on a new TV, because someday the government's going to be coming back, and when you're in retirement, asking you for that tax money back. And if you don't have other savings accounts, other places that you have accumulated wealth, you will have to take the tax money out of your lifestyle money. Okay? So a 401k, that's a product. It's not the answer to retirement income. What about real estate? Okay, real estate is it's a great asset when you buy it as an investment and you put a tenant, somebody who's renting from you, into that house. And the tenant is actually paying for the acquisition of that property. Let's say you have a mortgage on it. Now, when you get to retirement, though, what's more important? I've asked this question on this show multiple times. So here we go. Which is more important to you on the day after you retire? On the day after you retire, you're looking at all your bank statements and all of your balance sheets and seeing what your wealth looks like and the value of your assets. Which is more important on the day after you retire? How much money you have in real estate, or how much income, net income, goes into your bank account every month? Right? Hopefully you're all thinking the same thing. It's the income, right? So real estate is a great, in my opinion, a great wealth accumulation vehicle. However, when it comes to retirement income distributions, oftentimes when I go through the analysis with clients, we find out that real estate at that point may not be the best income vehicle and might contain significant amounts of risk and stress in that position as a landlord in retirement. So real estate, it is not the answer to retirement income. What about annuities? Right? We have there's all kinds of information out there in the financial world that annuities are the answer to retirement income. Oh, you should get a deferred annuity. You should get a variable annuity. You should get an income annuity. Well, I'm a big fan of annuities. Okay, I'm a big fan of annuities. Deferred annuities offer some very good security. They're great accumulation. That's all well and good. Okay, but they're not the answer by themselves to retirement income. What about those income annuities? What about those single premium immediate annuities? Well, those are annuities that you give money to an insurance company and they give you income, a guaranteed paycheck. Well, that's okay. They do have some great tax benefits. There's things called an exclusion ratio. So there's some nice things about the income annuity. However, the highest payouts, so those income annuities offer some really high payouts, but only when you choose things like a life-only option. Well, what does that mean? What is a life-only option on an annuity like that? Well, it means that that income pays out only as long as that individual lives. If that individual dies, the income stops. So that may not really work well for a husband and wife, especially if you're leaving a spouse behind, and then that income stops. So annuities come in all different shapes and sizes, but when we look at income, well, what we really want is that highest payout, right? But geez, that may not be the answer to retirement income either. And then finally, I made a point here that I wanted to include. I'm a big fan. Okay, so I'm going to, this is me giving you a personal disclosure. This is me and my personal feelings on this. I'm a big fan of cash value life insurance. However, here's my big however. It needs to be designed properly. It needs to be integrated into a bigger plan. It's a great asset, but it is not the answer to retirement income. Okay, so if you noticed, I just went through 4 things, that are out there in contemporary financial discussions, out there in the media: 401ks, real estate, annuities, life insurance. None of them are the answer by themselves to retirement income planning. But if you balance, for example, life insurance assets, and it's very important as we talk about this, life insurance assets, these are the type of life insurance that I personally own is similar to the life insurance that banks own. That large banks like Wells Fargo and Bank of America, they hold cash value life insurance on the balance sheet, not on the profit and loss statement. It's not an expense item. These big banks own hundreds of millions of dollars in cash value inside life insurance policies. Okay? So that's the type of life insurance I'm referring to here. Remember, though, the life insurance is not, and anybody who is pitching life insurance as some solution to retirement income planning or retirement planning, I would caution you in that situation, because life insurance is not by itself the answer to retirement planning, or specifically retirement income planning. Now, with that said, how would things be different, though, if a husband and wife, for example, had a certain amount of their savings accumulated inside a properly designed life insurance asset that happened to come with a very nice death benefit? How would things be different for those folks if we used life insurance assets that come with a death benefit to also give us protection, perhaps, to spend some of our other assets, maybe like a 401k, a bit more aggressively because we have some very conservative backup assets in the form of the life insurance? Or how would it be different if we used the death benefit of the life insurance to protect a spouse so that we could actually go get one of those income annuities that pay out those very high payouts with some nice tax benefits, and we don't have to worry about the income stopping if someone died, because the life insurance is there to cover the decision. Okay? So notice now things are starting to work together. So a life insurance now could be designed in such a way to give us a balance to how we spend our 401k. We can also use the 401k assets perhaps to shift into the income annuity option that pays out a much higher income rate than, let's say, the 3% or 4% rule we've talked about before. We want higher income. Well, we can shift 401k into annuity. We can use life insurance to cover the decision to protect the family and the legacy and survivor, right? Now things are working together. This is a very simplified conversation today that if it's starting to resonate with you, if you're hearing this, now's the time to go to Personal Pension Radio. Request a consult. Let's just have a conversation. We can do it either over GoToMeeting, like an online web meeting. We can do it by phone. We can do it in person. But this is the time. Take that step to actually see whether or not you're on track to be able to go after the highest possible income that you're currently able to generate in retirement. Okay? So watch your step. Anybody who's coming at you saying that annuities are the answer to retirement income, wrong. That is not true. An annuity portfolio blended into an integrated plan, now that makes sense. 401k, real estate, Life insurance, same thing. Anybody suggesting that this is the answer to supercharge your retirement? Well, any one of these things are important components of the bigger picture. They really have to be integrated together, and we could go through, there's probably 20 other investments or savings things you could put on the list. But I wanted to really just cover that in a bit more detail. So if you have questions about that, please, again, Personal Pension Radio. You can find me on Facebook at Personal Pension Radio. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kraig Strom, Kraig with a K, Strom. Reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. So the next thing I want to cover is something that I titled here, Kraig versus Goliath. And it goes back to, my thank you earlier to Joshua Sheets that, I have to tell you, I've been feeling a bit frustrated, a bit discouraged lately. I've had some conversations where I've had some opportunities to have conversations with several groups of CEOs, of successful people running companies, 5-6 different groups lately. And, well, only 4 people out of dozens of people have raised their hand to ask more questions about their specific situation. And I've just been feeling a bit discouraged. I feel like, gosh, maybe it's just the messenger. Maybe I am just not very good at encouraging people to take action. Maybe I haven't figured that out. And a coach, someone that I work with, reminded me that no, it's probably not that. It's probably just that people are people. Human beings tend to be creatures of habit, and we don't like change. So when I come in feeling like Kraig versus Goliath. Kraig versus Goliath, where when I look at the financial world spends millions and millions of dollars advertising strategies that benefit the financial world. Okay, so, and I know this from experience. Just for the record, I'm 18, coming up on, 18, 19 years in the financial services world. So I know what my education looked like when I came up in this business. I know what I learned. I was fed a lot of the same information that I actually encourage people to challenge today because of what I know now, looking back on the way I was trained. And the things that I share are just oftentimes so completely different that people will ask, well, why doesn't anybody, at my investment firm, why hasn't anybody told me this? Why didn't anybody tell me what the 4% rule was? Or why didn't anybody tell me what sequence of returns risk was? Right? And my answer has been to ask this question. Does Wall Street have any financial incentive to teach us how to take our money out of their system? Well, of course not. It's not an insidious thing. There's just no financial incentive really for the financial world, investment companies and brokerage firms and asset management companies to spend any significant amount of money teaching people how to take money out of the system. So I feel, like Kraig versus Goliath sometimes when I stand in a room full of CEOs or a room full of doctors or CPAs, and I share this information that just completely challenges conventional wisdom. This conventional wisdom that's been shaped by this gigantic marketing machine, and my little voice says, hey, wait, do you know why you're standing in that line? Do you have any idea where that line is going? And what I mean by that is I refer back to one of my favorite Gary Larson Far Side cartoons. Gary Larson was a cartoonist, and He is somebody that he doesn't publish anymore, but I basically have all of his material. And there's a picture that he did one day for his Sunday morning newspaper picture of a bunch of cows heading into a barn. Now, the sign does say Anderson Meats. Now, we don't know where they're going. It's just a big line of cows heading into the barn. And there's one cow trying to cut in line. And there's a cow in the back saying, "Hey, you, no cutting." And that's where I've gotten my phrase, get out of line. Why are you waiting in that line? Do you have any idea where it's going? Do you know what's on the other side of that door? Right? That I'm over here, my one little voice, just there's a few of us out there, but my little voice that says, "Hey, do you know why you're standing in that line? You maybe want to jump out of line, come on over here, let me show you something that's different. You may not really like what's on the other side of that door." And unfortunately, the part that's been very discouraging, I guess, lately is that there's just been so few people to actually get out of line. The rest of the people, so often they just cling to the line. They stay right where they're at. Well, no, this is where I've been. This is what's familiar. This is what everybody else is doing, and they cling to it. They stay right there. And I've just been trying to figure out how to. I guess I have to figure out how to change my message. What message do I need to relay? And how do I need to deliver that message to encourage people just to step out of the line long enough to learn this stuff, to ask questions that challenge conventional wisdom in hopes that they might be able to change the final point that they end up. Maybe they get in a different line and they go in a different door and things come out better instead of heading into Anderson Meats. Okay, so that's just my little amateur psychotherapy moment, Kraig versus Goliath. I will survive, and I will keep putting this message out there, and I will keep learning and educating myself and asking the same questions. So if you have something, if you hear something on my podcast that you want to challenge, that you want to suggest that I get out of line, I'm all ears. Send me a note on Personal Pension Radio. I'm all ears. I'm open to talk about it. Absolutely. So that's one thing I am committed to, is I'm always willing. I'm in my particular line now. I got out of that line and got in a new line and very happy where I'm at, but I'm also very open to learning and discussing and hearing what other people have to say. So, please, if you're out there and you're hearing these things and you're hearing something that resonates with you, like, maybe that could be, maybe I should kind of give that a try, I'm going to put out this call to action for you. Request your own retirement income analysis, right? Find out where your line is currently headed. If you've never had a retirement income analysis from me, and the way that I do it, you just have no idea what you're missing. You have no idea. And I'm going to leave you a little suspense. You got to see it. You will absolutely be glad you did, because you'll know what you're up against. So I want to wrap up with a couple of client stories. I have changed the names to protect me. Clients, of course, but changed the name to protect me. So this one came to mind as I was preparing for the podcast today. This was actually a group of professionals that when I was introduced to them through a professional network before they were my clients, and I had lunch with one of the partners. And I had lunch with one of the partners, and I was curious as to what they did. I knew that they were very successful. These four partners doing very well. And I knew they were doing well just in general. They're all driving new cars and very fancy schmancy cars, and they just bought a new building, and they're doing good. Should I say fancy schmancy? I don't know. Anyway, I asked, what do the four of you do to augment your retirement savings? So what are you doing to save beyond your 401k? Now, I asked the question at lunch as a matter of fact. I assumed they must be doing something beyond their 401k, because at their present income levels, there was absolutely no way that 401k investing was going to be enough to retire on. Just not even possible. So they must be doing something else. So I asked that question. And the one partner said, "Oh, we've got some other, another plan that we started with our investment advisors." And I pried deeper. I said, "Really, what did you set up? Was it some sort of a, retirement plan?" "Yeah, it was kind of, I like that, like a retirement plan." "Okay, well," and I basically had to pry the details out of him. And what had happened is their investment team, okay, so they each did have investments outside of their 401k, so that's great. Their investment team suggested that they each of the four partners purchase life insurance, cash value life insurance. And I said, "Oh, okay, so that you did that so that it would be a non-qualified retirement plan." And the answer was, "Yeah, I guess so." And what I was getting from the conversation was basically they really didn't have any idea what they had done. They didn't really understand it. But let me go back and make sure that you get an idea of what they were thinking about. When you set up a 401k, so you're a business owner and you set up a 401k, you can't just set up a 401k that benefits the executive team, leadership. The 401k has to be all-inclusive. It has to include all the employees of the company. And you can't go outside with some other company that you own and set up another 401k just for you. You can't do that. It's an attribution rule. You have to make sure that everything is integrated. So what some businesses will do is they'll start a 401k, and then they'll also set up a non-qualified plan where they're able to make contributions for specific individuals, most of the time the leadership team, and they make contributions, but they pay taxes on the contributions today so that they can, hopefully, if they've set it up right, be able to take money out in retirement tax-free or at a tax-favored rate. So that's kind of the general idea. So what they had done is they had used a life insurance, cash value life insurance, to set up one of these non-qualified benefit packages for the leadership team. And the partners could kind of tell that I was prying in a bit and asking some questions, and you could see that they were a bit uncomfortable because it was clear that they didn't understand what they had done, and they knew that I knew that they didn't know. Okay, so they said, "So what do you think of that, Kraig? What do you think of cash value life insurance as, kind of the answer to really, boosting up our retirement?" And I said, after just a moment, I said, "That could be an awesome decision." And of course, one of the partners picked up on the fact that I said that could be an awesome decision, okay? Because as it turns out, it wasn't a good decision. As it turns out, the type of cash value life insurance that had been used was, in my opinion, extremely inappropriate. It was not at all going to do the job that they thought it was going to do. And it had been pitched as the answer to turbocharging their retirement. Well, again, what did I say earlier? No, it wasn't. It was actually, as it turns out, an expensive mistake. And cash value life insurance was eventually the right fit for an integrated plan for income planning for the partners, but it wasn't the only component. So what had to happen there was we had to actually put plans in motion to find the right, properly designed life insurance to do what it is that they were actually hoping to do. And unfortunately, the previous life insurance was a bit of an expensive learning mistake. So good that I had asked the questions, good that I'd pried the information out, and good on them for being willing to say we don't know. Because that's what they ultimately did, and we started digging in and we fixed it and we got a good solid plan in place and integrated it with other components really solid. Okay? And then finally, this was actually just recently as well, that a gentleman was introduced to me by a CPA who introduced me to one of his clients because he was very concerned about retirement income numbers. And he was looking for answers as to how to maximize his retirement income. And he had gone to a financial advisor who had used what I'll call the buckets approach. The buckets of money approach was made famous by a certified financial planner a few years back. Who was, big name in the financial planning, radio sphere. And I call it the buckets approach. This concept is essentially fill up one bucket with a certain portion of your money and use that to live on for a certain number of years while the other bucket grows up. And then when bucket number 1 is empty, then you can start working on bucket number 2, and then you can start working on bucket number 3. And you're basically just eating up and, consuming the buckets. That's not my favorite strategy most of the time, but this gentleman is single, and yet here's the issue. This buckets approach, he was a bit uncomfortable with the presentation or the solution from the first financial advisor. And he came to his CPA, and his CPA says, maybe you want to talk to Kraig. So, here's my issue. Sum it up real quick. The very first thing that I noticed with the strategy being recommended was that there was a product. Instead of just a plain bucket, there was a variable annuity as bucket number 1. Okay, so remember what bucket number 1 is the income needed to live on right now for the next, in this gentleman's case, 7 years. So we're going to draw 7 years of income out of this bucket. However, the financial advisors had suggested a variable annuity as bucket number 1. So what's wrong with that? Well, if you don't know what a variable annuity is, it is from an insurance company, and it does have investment components inside the annuity. But as with just regular guaranteed annuities, they come with early withdrawal penalties. So if you, for example, draw out more than 10% of the account value, you get charged a penalty. So why in the world would this variable annuity be suggested as bucket number 1, the bucket that we're going to start liquidating right away? Well, in fact, he was told that he would have to wait 1 year to start taking money out of the annuity, right? He'd have to wait 1 year. It doesn't make any sense because he needs income right now. But the variable annuity, like guaranteed annuity, they have something called surrender charges, that if you take out more than 10%, for example, you have to pay a penalty. So here's this bucket approach being suggested to this gentleman as the answer to his retirement income. Well, how in the world is that going to work? And as it turns out, it doesn't work because, well, the variable annuity has a surrender penalty. So not only would he be in a position where he has to wait for his income, he actually would have to pay a penalty every year as he took out more than the allowed amount. Okay? So, again, this is maybe the theme all the way through here today is a product is not always the answer. It's just not. So in this case, the buckets approach can work. I mean, it can work if it's properly laid out and carefully monitored, but oh my goodness, why would they ever put the variable annuity, or any annuity for that matter, in the first bucket? Okay, so all I could come up with, and I don't know these folks, all I could come up with is that the variable annuity pays a nice commission. And to be fair, if it had been a guaranteed annuity, it pays a nice commission. That's it. I couldn't figure out any reason other than that why anyone would ever put that in the position that it was in. So the good news is that for this gentleman, we're actually building two different side-by-side comparisons where we're going to look at that buckets approach from two different perspectives, so that now he has an option to look at that is not focused on something that is advisor first. So we're working on two different options that are going to be focused on client first and advisor second. How about I put it that way? So I'm going to wrap up with that. Both good stories, good things came out of both of those situations where these folks thought they were on track and that they had done something, really to benefit themselves, and didn't realize really what they'd done. Now, gentleman number 2, he realized something wasn't right, but good on him for actually getting help and asking his CPA for an introduction. And I'm glad that I was able to meet him. So here's your call to action as I wrap up today. Go to Personal Pension Radio. Request your own income analysis, your own retirement income analysis. It's not hard to do. Nice, easy conversation, and I'll prepare your retirement income analysis so you know what your track currently looks like. And please continue to send in your questions, comments. I'll do my best to get to and answer those that have come in. Really do appreciate that. And if you have something you've heard of out there and you'd like to talk about it, if you'd like to, to challenge me on anything that I say on this podcast, I welcome the conversation. Thanks again for listening. Have a great time wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Remember, Personal Pension Radio, all about optimizing retirement income. Retirement income is what we're looking for in the long run. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast. If you missed anything during the show, that's okay. We took the notes for you. Check the show notes for links, offers, and a full transcript. And don't forget to head over to personalpensionradio.com and download your free retirement income report. While you're there, we'd appreciate some iTunes love. Please leave us a fantastic rating on iTunes by going to personalpensionradio.com/iTunes. Thanks again for listening.